got my phone so I can see if anybody's texting me. Wouldn't want to miss an important message. How you doing, ma'am? Yeah. Are you nervous? I am. Huh? Yeah, good. Well, my name's Danny. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm happy to be here. Lee. I've been seeing Lee forever. And I was trying to think of how many meetings he sits through. And I don't know if he's paying attention, but he darn sure looks like he is. But he does. Everyone said it, and it's true. He does a good service, and there's a lot of work into it, and it's not free. It's not. Now, you might not want to buy this one, but these others were great. I very much have enjoyed the speakers. Tommy and I do have a good time together. We go back a ways, and although we don't sound alike, thank God, we have a similar sense of humor, which is nice. And the Al-Anon was just a fine Al-Anon talk. I sat and listened to, I got to change my talk because I'm not crying. I've made up my mind. I am not. Everybody's cried up here, even the guy that stole my joke. I'm not crying. That's it. So anyway, I think about my tie is tight. I think about my mom. She was the queen of Al-Anon, and if she hadn't gone, I don't know that I'd have got there. I'll get to that in a minute. I was supposed to tell a joke, but I don't know where to start because my joke that I've told every time I talk is gone. So I'm just kind of wandering around waiting for God to show up. I certainly hope He does, because this is going to be a long hour for all of us. You can wander out. I'm just going to have to stand here and endure it. They finally showed up with water. That's very nice of you. I hate to be a burden on the conference, but thank you for the water. And my friend David and Gary, I flew into Atlanta. He said, just fly into Atlanta and we'll just drive down together. Jesus. It's a 4-hour drive, and he gets lost all the time. One of them's got. They both had their what do you call those guiding things, maps. They both had them going, but they didn't agree. And I was like, so we finally got here. And I got out of the car. I hadn't spoke to either one of them since. And Jennifer made a wonderful talk. I would love to have that kind of sense of humor, and a perspective that she has, and a very good heart. And I'll say this about Mr. Tommy. He's the real deal. I mean, I've been up to his place. I've been around with his people, and Tommy is very, very active, and his focus is the new guy. If you really want to get somebody to talk to, he's sitting right there. He's not very handsome and he's hard to understand. Yeah, him. But you won't drink because he'll be standing there talking until you're worn out. He's like taking a drink out of a fire hose. Anyway, I want to thank the committee and anybody who had anything to do with me coming here. It really is an honor and a privilege to get to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. And how I wound up here on Saturday night after listening to these other speakers is beyond me. I don't know what y'all were listening to, but thanks. I think. Anyway, come on, Lord. No, I got nothing either. That's two of us. So I'm a member of the Cypress Wood group of Alcoholics Anonymous that meets in the Alano Club in Spring, Texas. And it's a fine group. We're a 3 legacy group. I go to the 6:30 a.m. meetings, and I really, really love Alcoholics Anonymous. If I don't say anything else tonight, I want you to know one thing. I am sold out for AA. I absolutely love it. Just like everyone, and probably every one of you has said, I have no idea what my life would look like. I've been sober longer than I was drunk, longer than I was alive, and I'm just amazed. My family, my mother and dad, have already gone on, but neither of them went to the grave with me in the hot mess that I was. And I mean, they were more than slightly disappointed, and I was just that guy that I like to pop the clutch, smell the rubber burn, and take off in a dead run and have fun. And I wound up in lots of bad places. I got to Alcoholics Anonymous sometime in the fall of 1979. I did not intend to go to AA. I wasn't looking for AA. I was fighting with my then wife. We were both drunks, and we were having a family meeting in the car about sometime midday, and we were just passing the bottle and insults back and forth. And she just stopped in front of this nondescript-looking building in Midland, Texas, and ordered me out of her car. And I was too weak to resist. I'd just gotten out of the hospital. My liver was swollen. I had hepatitis, and I got out of the car, and she drove off, and I looked in that place, and it looked like an oil building. And I thought, well, I'll just go in there and see if we didn't have cell phones. And it was the pager days, and I went in there and to see if I could use the phone to save my marriage. Go call a friend. I stuck my head in the door, and there were some people sitting over in the corner, and they were playing cards and smoking and drinking coffee. And when they saw me, they were very happy to see me. And I came in, and I was asking, or at least I was trying to ask to use the phone. And they started talking to me about things that I hadn't never considered. And one of them said to me, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. And I thought, well, I think you're right. I'm not sure where we're going with that. I just want to use the phone. And they continued to talk to me, offer you orange juice and honey. And I said, no, thank you. Very polite man. And finally they said, look, if you'll stay for the meeting, we'll take you home afterwards. I said, that's good. So I sat out in the meeting, and they had this meeting. They said it was an hour long. I think it was longer. And I'm sitting out there getting sober, and I'm listening to people. They call people up. They didn't have discussion meetings. They'd pick on people. They come up to the podium because they said it was harder to lie with everybody staring at you. And so they call these guys and gals, and they come up and they say something horrible about themselves. Everybody claps and say, that's great. And I was like, wow, this is really, really bizarre. When it was finally over, they all stood up and held hands and said the Lord's Prayer. And man, that place just erupted into laughter. Everybody talking at the same time. And it was during the smoking days of AA. And so really all you could see clearly were legs, And, they were just going. And something began to happen to me that had been happening to me since I could remember. Anytime I was in any kind of a awkward social situation, my gut would tighten up. My head would start racing, my foot would start patting, and I'd start saying over and over again to me, I got to go. I got to go. I don't know where I got to go. I don't know why I got to go, but I got to go. And behind me, there was a door, out the back door, and I started backing up trying to get out of that place, and all of a sudden, the place parted like the Red Sea, and here come this little dour-looking guy with a young guy, and they're headed straight for me, and I saw him coming, and I said, oh, hell no, I ain't going anywhere with him. And he walked up to me and he said, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. Would you like to go? And I thought, Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. Be still my beating heart. In my head, what I said was, there's no way I'm going off with a bunch of geriatrics for ice cream while my wife is out with her boyfriend. That ain't happening. But what I said was, sure, I'd love to go. So I wound up over at Baskin Robbins holding a melting Rocky Road ice cream while they tried to pitch me on Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm a big picture guy. I don't want to go into the details. I don't want to read your big book. I just want to know, straight, quick answers. I'm a very busy man. I don't have a job. I don't live anywhere. But I can't stay very long, so I'm going to get to the point. And I'd ask them, standing around in there, do you think I'm alcoholic? And they would begin to tell me about themselves. And I thought, I don't care that you're alcoholic. I'm not interested in that at all. I didn't ask that question. I want to know you think I am. And it's the same thing, And I thought that was one of the most wasted evenings I'd ever had. But the truth is, what had happened to me is I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous and I got a cup of coffee and a brand new life. And it was quite, took me a little time. I call that my been around date, by the way, because from 1979, the fall of 79 up until February of 81, I was always with you, but not drinking all the time was too stressful for me. So I would take weekends off and stuff, But I was sincere. I wanted to hang out with you. I wish I was very honest with myself. I wish I was alcoholic, that'd be great, but I had other issues and it wasn't alcoholism, I had, for one, my wife had a boyfriend, which was very irritating to me. And I lived in a stolen car. It was a beat up, terrible stolen car. That guy didn't even want it back. And I had hot checks out all over town because I had when I'd gotten out of prison on parole, I had gotten a job and gotten everything squared away, and then I met her. And, I met her, she was dancing on top of a table. And I saw her, I knew that was my wife. And we married her, and I married her, and it really went kind of downhill for us. I had to quit my job to guard her because she was not the kind of girl you could trust. And she's a bartender, so I hung out with her at the bar and drank and guarded her. And wrote hot checks, and I'm just getting more stressed out all the time. And that's kind of, you could see why I'm not like you. In fact, I even made a talk in AA with only about, I don't know, I think I had 6 weeks, something like that. They needed somebody to go talk at a prison, and I told them, I've been to prison. So, I thought that qualified me. You didn't realize that you should have also asked me if I was sober, which I wasn't. But we went over to prison, and I made a very, very teary talk. It's good. In fact, there was a guy that went to the group that had 5 years, and I'm still friends with him today. He was going to the Dale Carnegie course with my mother. And when we got back the next day, he went out with my mom to that Dale Carnegie course, and he said, I'm thinking about asking Danny to be my sponsor. And she said, well, you need to wait till he quits drinking. I always remind him of that. Anyway, I'll tell you a little something about how I wound up in that mess. I was my mother and it's going to take a couple of hours, so hang in there. Now, my mother and dad were married on Valentine's Day, 1944. My mother was 14, my dad was 19. I was born a year later. My dad went off, fought in the Second World War, and my mom and I moved down to South Texas, and that's where we were when he came home. And he came home, he was a little bit screwed up. But he was a big, handsome, hard-working man, and very gregarious. If he had a few drinks, when he had a few drinks, he was a lot of fun. And he would take me with him, and we'd go out. And when he get off work, we'd go out to the bars that are on the beach. And I get to play the jukebox and hang out with my dad and his friends and have a big time. Now, my mom didn't enjoy it one bit. She just told him. She said, "Look, you either settle down and quit, or I'm going to take Danny and leave." And he didn't want to lose his family, so he quit. And overnight, he changed. I had played with my dad on the weekends. He'd come in, and I just loved him. I mean, he was like my hero, and I was his firstborn. I have a memory of being out in the backyard with him playing that country and western music, drinking long neck beers, and holding me up to his bare chest and patting my head, and me feeling on a visceral level that I'm just safe. Nothing can harm me. I'm with my dad. He quit drinking and just did a 180, and he yelled at everybody all the time. He was angry, driven, withdrawn, and I didn't know. Everyone. I'm always the one that blames myself for everything because the world revolved around me. But I don't blame my alcoholism on that. I just know that would put a little kink in my psyche. But I've got two younger brothers, but they were so much younger than me that I kind of grew up alone. By the time I got to middle school, I was pretty weirded out. And I went to school one day, and they did this thing where they played a movie called Duck and Cover, and that's where you would watch a film to tell you what to do in case a nuclear bomb went off in your neighborhood. And I watched it, and you were supposed to take your book and go out in the hallway and get down and put it over your head. And I wasn't their best student. I knew that was woefully inadequate. But it just was what it took to kind of tip the scales for me, and I immediately started running away, and they started catching me and bringing me back, and I ain't staying. I'm freaking out. I don't know where we're going, don't know what we're doing, but I got to go. And finally, they just had me committed to Big Spring State Hospital, the one that Clancy hung out in. And I went over there for 90 days, and, when I got out with my little bottle of psychotropic pills, nothing happened, and one day I won't go to school. I'm just kind of hanging out, and one day my mom, I borrowed her car. Actually, I stole it, and I dressed up like the cool kids, I got on the white T-shirt with cigarettes rolled up my sleeve, I looked the part, and I got my mom's car, which is a big boat. It was a Ford station wagon. It's kind of just like that when it went down the road. And I drive down to this local drive-in where everybody's drinking and playing music and having fun. And as soon as I pulled in that car, I could see all those cool chopped 57 Chevys, and I thought, I got to go. But one of the guys saw me, came over, and he talked to me, got me out of the car, and finally he offered me something to drink. And nothing really happened. I mean, it didn't taste that good, but I kept drinking because I wanted to be a part of. And something happened sometime that night, and I just unwound, and all of a sudden I was able to do things I'd never been able to do. I didn't feel apart from. I didn't feel like I had to go. If anybody had to go, it was you. And, I was just having a wonderful time. Turned out it was one of the most magical evenings of my 15 years at that time. And there were some few things that went wrong. I wrecked my mother's car. I got my nose broke. I puked on myself and wound up in juvenile detention. Outside of that, it was the best evening I'd ever had. My folks thought that I got out of the hospital a little early, and they had me sent back over, and I immediately escaped. And they caught me and brought me back and said, if you do that again, we're going to give you shock treatments, because they would do that punitively back in those days. So I'm sitting in this ward just biding my time, and I'm walking. I made a couple of friends that are getting shock treatments. We weave baskets, bond, and we're walking from the ward over to the cafeteria, and we're past a car that's unlocked with the keys in it. I mean, is that odd or is that God? So I grabbed these two guys, and we jumped in the car, started takeoff, and we make it 38 miles over to Midland. And we get over to Midland. I picked up two more guys who should have been in that hospital. And and this was a very, very exciting time in my life, because this is my first gang. I'm their leader, and I have a plan. We're going to Mexico. It's going to solve everything. And so we're heading south to Mexico. We have no money, so we stop and we siphon gas and we create diversions and steal booze and food. And every stop, one of the stops I remember pretty clearly, we got out and those guys wandered off. It turns out that they were really in that hospital for a reason. Every stop, it became increasingly more difficult for me to gather my gang up and get them back in the car. But we got across the border into Mexico, and I sold that car to a taxi driver for a few hundred pesos, which I thought was a lot of money. And we got over to a place called the Cadillac Bar in Boys Town, and we're having a drink. This is when I realized I'm pretty much out of plan. And I'm wondering what we're going to do next. And all of a sudden, there's this big fight, and one of the guys I brought with me had killed a parrot that belonged to a lady that worked down there. And, oh, man, it started a hell of a fight. And there's a fight going on, and here come the federales, here come the local police. I grabbed these guys. I said, we got to get back to Texas. And we ran for the international border. They caught us on the Mexican side, and we went to jail in Mexico. That's what I said. In the doctor's opinion, it says that the alcoholic's problem pile up on him and become astonishingly difficult to solve. And this was one of those instances that bore that truth out, because I'm not bilingual and I don't know how to tell these people I want my mother. But so we're in jail in Mexico for an extended period, and my mother does eventually find us, and she gets me out, but not them, because she knew that they were bad influence on me. And so we make this ride all the way back to Midland, and all the way she would dial in Mexican music and turn it all the way up and quote scripture to me. And it was her attempt at aversion therapy. And it worked. I still hate that music. But we got home, and my mom and dad, they had a meeting with me sitting at the table. I'm just like this. They're talking, and I'm just doing that. And my dad said, hey, let's just have him join the Navy. They'll make a man out of him. And I wanted to say, I'm an escaped mental patient, right? And apparently the Navy in 1962 had very, very low standards, because the day I turned 17, I joined the Navy. But I loved being in there. I really did. We all had the same uniform. We looked alike. We learned all the right moves together. And I thought, now this works. I like this. And I became a CB, which is a construction battalion, which is we hung out with the Marines. We didn't get to go ride on boats anywhere. And I grew big and strong. And our motto was we fight and we build. And it should have been we fight, build, and drink. And everybody drank, and I could put it away. I grew big and strong, and we'd go out and work during the day in that hot tropical sun and sweat it out. And that night I'd be at the bar and pounding them back, having a big time. But I started having weird reactions, and like blacking out and not knowing that I'm blacking out, just winding up places and wanting to go places that I'm not supposed to go. And sometimes I'm mad, and sometimes I'm sad, and sometimes I want to fight, and sometimes I want to cry. And all of this has got me kind of confused. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching everybody else, because that's what I do. I'm like this. I'm a chameleon. I watch you. What do you do? How are we acting here? How am I supposed to be so I can be okay? I don't know what you're thinking, but I can watch what you're doing, so I'll do that. And I'm looking at these guys, and they're doing the same thing I am, but they're just going ahead and sweating it off, and the next day going to work. And I'm acting pretty bizarrely. And I start to withdraw from people. And I'm kind of hanging out for myself, and we're going from island to island working. And we got to Guam. I got drunk with some British sailors. And, man, that was a bad plan. They invited me aboard their vessel, apparently, because I woke up on their ship. They had liquor rations. I woke up on their ship, and they had gone to sea. But when they do that, they always have all the sailors out on deck so that they do a muster, and they had too many sailors, and it was pretty clear who wasn't British, and they sent out a launch. They come got me and brought me back to Shore Patrol, and I get locked up in the brig, and I'm humiliated. I think the whole world's looking at me. And I get back to the States, and I'm isolated. I don't want to be with anybody. I don't know what's going on. The only time I feel comfortable is when I take a drink. And one day I got drunk and went AWOL. I didn't intend to go AWOL. It wasn't in my mind. I just got drunk and decided to go to Texas. And they caught me and brought me back, and I attempted suicide. They did a little research, and they found out they had an escaped mental patient for a sailor. And they came to me with a plan that gave me a general discharge under honorable conditions. And I got out of the Navy, and I went straight to downtown Los Angeles, and I lived on the streets of L.A., and I learned to lie, cheat, steal, live in all-night theaters, and hustle. And I've also found out it's very hard to get out of downtown L.A. when you have nothing. And I would call my mom on days when I was just so hungover and so worn out, no clothes, nowhere to go. And I'd call her, collect, and promise that I'm coming home if I could just get the money to get a bus to get out of here. And my mother would wire me the money. And this happened multiple times, but once I got the money, and I'm so relieved because I'm finally going to get out of this hellhole and I'm going back home. And I'm walking to the bus station, and I pass a bar that the door was open. It had rolling pleated naugahyde, chairs, and it had a smoky mirror behind the bar, and that cool music. And I thought, I want a Manhattan. And I don't even know what a Manhattan is, but I went in and I started drinking, and I came out 3 or 4 in the morning. I mean, I'm dead broke, and I'm still stuck. Obviously, I eventually got out of L.A. and I got back to Texas, and I worked for my dad for a while. But I'm an entitled, angry drunk, and I'm in a lot of trouble, so he fires me. And I start hanging out over in a part of town that is known for rowdy people. And I'm hanging out over there, and I meet some guys that every time they show up, everybody kind of gets quiet and backs away. They dress nice, they have nice cars, they carry guns, and they drink Crown Royal. They're successful people, and they were stealing whatever they could, but at that particular time, out of the oil field. And they were looking for help, and I interviewed for the job. I got it, and pretty soon I've got a gun, a car, a girlfriend, and some money, and I drink Crown Royal, and I think, well, everybody's got to be something. I'm good with this. And about 6 months into it, everybody got arrested. Texas Rangers come up and busted everybody. Everybody went to prison except for me. I'd never been in any real trouble, so I got probation. I got a probation, and all I had to do was live down the terms of the probation, not pay back the money. And I'm telling you, in jail with all that's in me, I sincerely meant that. I'm done with this. I'm not going to live like this. I got out of jail. I got a job. I worked at pumping gas. About 3 weeks, I pumping gas, and I remember holding that gas nozzle in there, and looking up there, and that little heavy-set guy with a bald-headed, smoking a cigar, and I thought, he can pump his own damn gas. And I just left the nozzle running and went into the cash register and made a cash advance, and went across the street to a bar and had a drink, and when I came to, I was 300 miles away in Dallas. And, I do what we do. I dig a deeper hole. I met guys who were doing somewhat the same thing, and I'm ripping and running in Dallas, and pretty soon, my picture is up in places you don't want it. My dad, who is a salt of the earth guy, is humiliated, and my mother's freaked out, and she just knows it's her fault. And my brothers are scared to death of me. And at one time, for a little while, I had been the big brother, someone they had looked up to. But it's just, everything's gone to hell, and I'm on the run. I eventually get arrested. I got 13 5-year sentences, and I was sent off to Texas Department of Corrections. And I can tell you about that. It's being in the 60s, being in prison, was very time consuming. And and I would write my mother, and she would write me back, and it was clear that this time that I realized that I was on the wrong path, and that I'm going to get better. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get out. I'm going to get an education. And my mom would write me back and forth, and I told myself and my mom, I am never drinking whiskey again, except on special occasions. And she came to get me. It's a 400-mile ride back, and getting out of prison, it turns out, is a very special occasion. Because I bought a half pint of whiskey, and we got in the car, and my mom's in a good mood, and I'm in a good mood, and I take a couple of pops, and I hit that sweet spot. And I mean, I just want to stop and talk to everybody. I'm in heaven, man. Life is good. I've got a brand new, fresh start. And we're riding back, and my mom said, son, what you need is a wife, kid, a car, a bank account, a job, and a house. You'll be okay. And so when we got back to Midland, I went looking for a woman that had kids, a bank account, a job, and a car. And I found her. And my mother was wrong. That was the worst 2 weeks of my life. And I left that gal, and I'm hanging out at my bar. And I'm hanging out at my bar just doing what I do, hustle, pool, do side jobs and drink. And one day a real pretty young girl walks in, and she has a drink, and she's crying, and I'm very compassionate. I go over to talk to her. As we're talking, I find out that she's pregnant, and it's in this day and age, her folks wouldn't let her come home as an unwed mother. And I got to crying because I didn't have a home to go to, so we just decided we'd get married. Turns out, though, in Texas, you have to wait 3 days. You got to get a license and wait because they want to be sure you're in love. And so we went over to the courthouse, got a license, come back to the bar and drank, wait those 3 days. So we went back to the courthouse, knee walking drunk. I don't know why they married us, but they did. We married us, went right straight out to the payphone. I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm married. And she said, I know. I said, I don't know how you could. I just did it. And she said, oh, my God, Danny, you have a wife. And I thought, details. I'm a big picture guy, So I got to come up with a plan, and I'm that guy that will shoot arrows into the wall and then paint bullseyes around them and congratulate myself. And so I quickly think this through, and we decide to go on our honeymoon, and we get on a bus heading from McAllister, Oklahoma, just drinking whiskey, entertaining the passengers. We get to McAllister, Oklahoma, and we get out, and my new father-in-law picks us up in a chauffeur-driven limousine. And you should really, meet the family before you get married. My new father-in-law was the warden in McAllister State Penitentiary. And so I was very uncomfortable in that relationship. So I absconded, which means to move in a secret way. And, and I get back to Texas, and my mom arranges a divorce and an annulment. And now I'm in love, but I don't know who with. And, I'm just doing what I'm doing. And, man, one day in she walks. And we saw each other. It was instant love. The real love. The kind, you don't fall in love at this depth until you get to a treatment center. But I was just lucky like that. And, so we're drinking and hanging together, and we care about each other, but we both got the disease, and it's bad. And mine's progressing, and I'm using other things to keep myself going. And the long and short of it is, I got to be very violent, and she left in order to save herself, and she was killed in a car wreck. And I had no tools for dealing with that, and all I felt was self-pity. I felt bad for me. Why did this happen to me? I didn't think about her losing her life at 26. I didn't think about her family. I just thought about me and how unlucky I am and how unfortunate I am. And I got a bottle of whiskey and a gun, and I went on a crime spree, and I was given 10 years in prison. And I'm back in prison, and as I start to think about it, I know I'm going to spend my life here or somebody's going to kill me. And I started trying to go to college, and turns out I was a good student, and I started getting educated, and I started doing philosophy and yoga and reading everything spiritual that I could find. And I won't hang out with anybody, and I'm going to be different. I'm going to get out, and I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to be good, and it's going to be okay this time. And I got out, and I'm afraid. I know I have a problem with drinking, but I think the story I tell myself is the reason I'm the way I am is because I'm an escaped mental patient. I'm crazy. I'm crazy. You can tell I'm crazy. Look at the crap I do, you know. And so I meet this girl, and she's dancing on top of a table, and I quit going to report to my parole officer because I didn't have anything good to report, and I quit the job, and next thing you know, hot checks everywhere, and I'm in a stolen car, and I'm sweating, and I'm hurting, and I got hepatitis, and my wife, she's got her boyfriend, and things are not going well. And I ran into you, and I'd come to AA, and I'd listen to you guys, and you were funny, and I liked you. I didn't know what you were talking about most of the time, but I liked being around you. But I wouldn't shut up. Anytime I was in one of your meetings, I had to have something to say. I was the guy that would steal out of your baskets. I was the guy that hit on the girls, that was disruptive and disrespectful to the older generation, the older timers. And I know that people would look at me, and I know you wanted me to get sober, but I'm sure you were thinking, does he have to do it in our group? And I'm on the run. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to get revoked. I'm going to go back to prison. So I'm not just going to stand there and wait for that. I'm on the run. I'm going here and there. And I always wind up just at AA, Austin, Dallas, wherever I went, that's where I'd go to hide. And every time you'd see me, no matter how I behaved, you'd say, come on in this house. We're glad to see you. I've never seen anybody like that, because I think we do everything we can to drive love and people away. But y'all just kind of ignored that, and every time you saw me, you welcomed me in. And I was in Austin, Texas, and I was going to AA, and I went to a bad meeting, and I just everybody in there, they're old folks. Everything they said was crap. I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm tired of them. It's hot. And I just got up and I walked out, and I got in my car, and I thought, I need some cigarettes. I had a pack of cigarettes, or a carton of cigarettes in the back seat. But I went to the store with this idea that I'm going to get a pack of cigarettes. And I went in and came out with a 6-pack of beer. And I said, well, if there's a God, why don't you stop me from this time? And I just started drinking. About 10 days later, I came to in the back seat of that car, and I'm puking blood and bile. And it's like there's no bottom in sight. It's just like the devolution of everything that's good and decent in life. And I'm going down, and nothing's going to stop it. And I just lay there a minute, and I said, God, I'd do anything if I could just get sober. And apparently, I don't know what happened, but apparently he heard me, because 2 guys came from the club to get me. And one of them's name was John Henry. And he had a young guy with him. I got in the car, and we're headed back to the club. And I'm like, John Henry, I said, what am I going to do? He said, oh, Danny, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. I said, well, how do you do that? And he said, well, don't drink right now. And then when it's right now again, don't drink then either. And that kid that was with him said, yeah, and pretty soon you'll have a minute. And and John Henry said, don't pay any attention to him. He said, let me tell you something. You join us in this thing we do, and you find yourself a sober, self-respecting member of Alcoholics Anonymous with a host of friends and a relationship with the power that runs this universe. And I'm telling you, drunk on the way to the club, I was smitten with a magnificent obsession for sobriety. I'm showing up in Texas. We do clubhouses. We don't do the churches much. But I've started showing up at the club when they opened it up in the morning. I'm not there trying to figure out how to steal or beg anything. I just showed up, and when those guys started setting up, I helped them set up, and I kept my mouth shut. And when they talked, I listened. And I'm like, I'm hungry for this. Like, I want to know what we're doing here. And after about a couple of weeks, one old man came up and he said, "You're doing good, kid." And he handed me this big shoebox full of cassette tapes and a battery-powered cassette player. And I started playing those things and riding around. And I'm like, I'd laugh and I'd cry and I'd just be amazed. And, man, I think, man, I wish I were alcoholic. This would be, this would be so cool, And one day I'm out riding and I listened to the car and it just stuck in, and it said, just let go. Just let go. Let go and let God. And I thought, let go and let God do what? And I thought, John Henry will know. So I went to the club, and there he stood, holding a cup of coffee out front in a bib overalls. And I was walking up to him. I looked at him. I said, "John Henry, I'm alcoholic." He said, "Yeah, you are." He said, "Come on in this house." We went back in the back room, and he sat down, and he sat down, and he gave me a talking to, and he listened to me. And he reviewed the steps. And we had talked a number of times, but I never listened. But now I'm listening. And he sat down and he said, "Danny, there's some people that come into Alcoholics Anonymous and they just come to our meetings and they seem to be happy and come into meetings a little bit and their lives get better, and I'm happy for them." But he said there are other people that can't happen for because they have the disease of alcoholism. And if you have the disease of alcoholism, you're screwed. There's no out. There's no win. There's no way to stop it. And he said, I'm pretty sure, have understood that you have it. And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "The guy you are can't stay sober. You're going to have to change." And I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "Get on your knees and we're going to say we're going to say the third step prayer now." And I got on my knees with him and I was very uncomfortable. And I said that prayer. And he said, "I want you to write an inventory." And I wrote that inventory, and I when it came time to share my fifth step, I couldn't find him. And I'm riding around town and I'm sweating bullets. And I remember this old woman that everybody liked it. She was a wise old gal. I went to her house and knocked on the door. She answered. I said, "Glenda, would you listen to my fifth step?" And she said, "Somebody's going to have to, honey, or you're going to die." And I went in and I spent probably 4 or 5 hours in there reading that stuff. And she laughed. Like, "Man, this is serious stuff." But she'd laugh, and finally she said, "Honey, what's evolved here is a liar, a cheat, a thief, and one of the most selfish people I've ever heard of. And if you want to be like that, you don't need any help. You got this. But if you want to join us, you're going to have to access the power. Something's going to have to change in you." She said, "I want you to go down the town lake, and I want you to see what review what we've just done." I went down to Town Lake and I got out of that car. As soon as I stepped out of that car, I felt this power wash through me and over me, and I felt free. And I knew that there was God, and I knew I wasn't going to have to drink again. And I was lit up. And I'm like, I'm going to the club, straighten those old timers out, start chairing meetings. I got this. And I'm lit up, and I made up. And I'll tell you another thing. I had also made up my mind. It was a very conscious decision that I am not doing steps 8 and 9. That is not happening. Guys like me don't do steps 8 and 9. You were just bad to your neighbors and your husband or wife. I got bigger issues than that. But I'm going to live underground in AA in Austin, and I'm just going to be a 12-stepper. And it's going to be great. And I was happy doing it. Man, my life, I got friends. I'm lit up. I pray. In about 6 months, it's back. And I've got that knot in my gut, and I got to go. It's hitting me. And I called John Henry, and I said, I'm leaving. I got to go. I can't do this. And he said, "Meet me at the club." And I met him at the club, and he said, "Danny, what's standing between you and that God you experienced are the things on your 8-step list?" I said, "Well, there's some things I didn't tell you." And he said, "Well, what are they?" I said, I live in a stolen car. He said, that's a problem. And there was a bank robbery in San Angelo, Texas in the summer of 1980. I was in the area. I'm a blackout drinker. I have no knowledge of this at all. And they're looking for me, and they have a videotape. And he said, well, son, you got to go in and clean that up. I said, oh, no. He said, you told me when we started this that you were willing to go to any length to have this gift. I said, that's theory. This is serious. They will lock me up for the rest of my life. He said, well, get another sponsor, son, because you will not make it with that. And I went out and sat down in that car, and he left, and I just sat there, and I just had this horrible sinking feeling. I was so scared. And I just looked up and I said, God, I want to do it, but I'm too afraid. And all of a sudden, I got an epiphany and this warm feeling. What I knew was 4 walls do not make a prison. Prison is what you carry around on the inside. And if I wanted to have the gift that you had, I had to be willing to surrender my physical freedom to have this gift. And the next day, I drove down to the Austin Police Department, parked that car a long ways away. And I went up there, and I went in and I told them who I was. And when they took me up to the robbery department, I told them all about my good work in AA. You know, got to grease the skids. And he had a copy of that tape, and he put it in and he played it, and it was about 15 seconds long. It's grainy of the tall, skinny guy going from till to till. And I watched it, and that was my MO. And I watched it, and I thought, I'm in so much trouble. I wonder what I did with the money. And he turned around and looked at me, and he said, the guy that walked in here, he said, the guy that did this wouldn't walk in here. He said, we'll find him. He said, but you need to get your skinny butt back to AA, and maybe you can do something about the mess you've created. Now get out of here. And I'm like, oh, I'm in AA forever, you know. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not afraid to do men's anymore. I'll do yours. I don't care, you know. And I'm good to go. And it's a complete change. It seems to me that the step's not as hard. It's becoming willing that's hard. It's becoming willing because I have a friend who said it was an epiphany to me. He said, you know, you think your fear will protect you, but what it does is it isolates you. And he said, you've been listening to that so long, and you've got to walk through it. Fear is just very, very thin. It's about 50 yards wide and 50 yards high, but it's very thin, and you have to walk through it. And on this side, it's horrible. And on the other side, it's freedom. And I began to do that. I began to make amends. I went to my dad, who I loved very much. My dad, the last thing I'd heard he'd said to me when somebody talked about me, and they'd ask him about me, and he said, Danny who? And turned around and walked off, because he was the salt of the earth, one of the greatest generation. And for all of his faults, he didn't lie, cheat, and steal. He didn't do those things. And he couldn't understand a son of his doing it. I went to make amends to him. And he said, that's fine, kid. I'm glad you're sober. Let's get on with life. And I would ask you guys, what do I do? How do I get this relationship back? How do I mend these fences? And you said, you continue to be a good son. You show up at functions, you write letters, you send flowers to your mother. You do what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. Bob Bazan says, go to work, stay at work, work at work. Show up at AA and carry the message. Give them what you have and don't give them what you don't have. And I began to do that. I've got lots of amends in front of me, and I began to tackle that list. And I began to have a life that was beyond imagination. I've had lots of fantastic things happen. But I was 20 years sober. And my dad, I came to Midland to do some business, and I went to the club that I got sober in, and I went there and made a meeting, and I'm going back to their house, and my mom is waiting up on me like always. And when I walk in, I could see my dad back in his bedroom. And I asked my mom, I said, is he asleep? And she said, he's just pretending to be. And I walked back into his room to say goodnight. And when I got back there on impulse, I leaned down and I kissed him on his old bald head. And before I could pull away, he reached up and pulled my head to his bare chest. And he patted my head. And he said, "I didn't know what to do, boy." And I said, "Me neither, Pop." He said, "Those people in AA, I hope you'll always remember to tell them how much we appreciate what you've done for us, for our family." And I said, "I always do." My dad, they moved into a retirement center thing, and he became the champion Wii bowler, And he could just sit there and flick his wrist and bowl 300. He got me my own remote. I would call him. He hated being on the phone. I'd call him. He's hard of hearing. And I'd say, "Hey, it's Danny," and he'd say, "Here's your mother," because that's all he's going to say. But he wouldn't answer the phone. I knew we were tight. The day came when my brother called me and said, "If you want to see your dad alive, you better come now." And I said, "I ain't coming. I ain't doing that. It's too raw. It's too hard." And I'm shook up, and I go to the club, and I walk in the club, and I tell the fellas, I said, "My dad's died, and I can't go." And this big old Marine walked up to me, and he said, "You go get on that plane, and you fly up there, and you call us. You call Alcoholics Anonymous. You go up there and be with your family. They need you. And when it gets too hard, you go out in the hallway, and you say a prayer." So I went up there, and I've spent the next 3 days watching my dad die and trying to helping him keep clean. And at one point he said, "Son," you said, "but now you're getting paid back for some of that hell you put me through." And I said, "Pop, you'd have to live 200 years for us to get even." He said, "There's nothing to get even with." He said, I'm proud of you, son." And I was able to tell him that, I'm going to be here for Mom. And he said, "I know." And my mom had Parkinson's and was very frail, and he'd been her caretaker for the past 7 years, and it was a tough job. But my brother and my mom and I are standing around his bed, and I just saw his eyes roll back, and his jaw went slack, and you could just see that breath go out. And I looked at him, and I told my mom, I said, "He's gone." And we waited a minute or two, and my mom looked at him and she said, "Dan, what are you staring at?" And I wanted to tell her he's gone again. And all of a sudden he just raised up and he got a little light in his eye and he looked at her and he said, "I see a dove." And he lay back and died. And I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous that I was there, that I could do that I could have that life. My mom was a queen of Al-Anon until Parkinson's shut her down. And called her on my first AA birthday. And I said, "Mom," I was in Austin, she was in Midland. I said, "Mom, I'm sober a year." And she said, "Yeah, you bet," and hung up the phone. I was like, after all the work I've done, I couldn't believe she could be like that. And to show you how things progress, I was driving back from a job. I've run a job at Twin Star Labs in Dallas, and I had like 50 employees working up there. And I'm tired, and I look up, and I think it's February the 18th. My God, it's my birthday. And I'm going to head to the club. And I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, I'm 27 years sober." She said, "Well, of course you are. Now quit calling so late." And after my dad died, I would call her every day. 95%, I'm pretty sure about 95% of doing it, but I call her every day at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. And it was just a thing I did because I promised my dad and myself I'd look after her, although I lived somewhere else, and my brothers were there physically to help. And when she died, my brothers called me, and I said, "Thank God," because she'd had Parkinson's, and it was just so hard to see. And I went up there to go to her memorial that they were holding at that retirement center. And as I walked in, there was two little ladies that are just dressed up real nice, and they saw me and they said, "You're the one." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're the one that called every day." I said, "Yes, ma'am, it's me." And she said, she'd just shoo us out of the room. That's my boy called it. And she said it meant the world to her. And I just was stunned, just by doing what you asked me to do. And my brother walked up to me and he said, "Great. We did all the work and you get all the glory." Which he did. I had no real skills. Of course, I had a little electrical background, but I'd done a little of this, a little of that, a little of all these things. And I'm like asking God, what am I going to do? How do I'm a loser. I'm just an ex-convict. And John Henry said, "You're not an ex-anything." He said, "You're a child of God and a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You reach for the stars." Early on, I went to a meeting, and the guy, I was all twisted up, and the guy said, I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I look in the mirror, and I say, I'm a sober, healthy, happy, handsome, and exciting, loving child of God." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yep, it helps me." And so that morning, I got up, and I tilted that rear view mirror in that car, and I said my affirmation, and then I called John Henry and I told him about it, and I said it didn't work. He said, "Well, Danny, I can tell you why." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "It's not true." Yeah, I've had great sponsorship. John Henry told me to always remember your primary purpose. Always remember it, no matter what. I was many, many years sober, and I got a call. There was a drunk that was tearing up his mother's house, and he was a good guy. We knew who he was. And I said, "Man, I need to go over, and he's going to be a little belligerent." And I called. John Henry ran this big $100 million Austin asset management company. And I thought, man, I'll just call John Henry and see if he'll go with me. And I got to his office, and I went in and I asked his secretary, I said, "Is John Henry available?" And she said, "No, he's in a really big meeting with investors, and this deal really this is going to make or break some deals for him." I said, "Okay," and I laughed, and as I was going out, I said, "Well, tell him it was his primary purpose." And I was just kidding. I got a call before I got 5 minutes away, and I came by, and here he is. He got his bow tie on, and he gets in the car. He said, "Where are we going, Wino?" And he took me there. He showed me Alcoholics Anonymous, and he showed me that things don't come before the Spirit, before people. He is one of the guys that taught me that I need to be spiritually led and not emotionally driven. I was talking to him once, and we're going out to talk to drunks. He do this big book study, and we're riding out there, and of course I got women problems, and I'm explaining them to him, and he's listening and driving. We get out there, and he starts talking to this group of guys, and one of them, real feisty guy. John Henry always dressed really nice, had the bow tie, dressed good, and we're out there, and this guy stopped John Henry. He said, "What do you come out here all dressed up for?" He said, "Well, why wouldn't I? You're the most important people I know." And that guy started crying. And John Henry became his sponsor, and to my knowledge, he's still sober, and that had to be 20-something years ago. And I want to be like that. You can talk to me all day long about what we do and memorize this and pray that, but this is monkey see, monkey do. And you get with somebody who does this thing consistently, and you can't help but pick up those habits. They're habits of sobriety. They change your life. I live in Austin. I live in Spring. It was a suburb of Houston, in case you want to know. And I got a nice house, swimming pool, dogs. On my fourth or fifth wife, I can't remember. I married I don't really want to tell this, but I'm going to. I was married for 12 years, and my wife got up and walked out and went to Oklahoma. I got a divorce, and I was older and lonely, and a gal walked up to me that had been sober for just a very few years, much, much younger than me. And she said, "I've had a crush on you for 3 years, but you were married." And I said, "Honey, you have any idea how old I am?" And I told her, and she looked at me, and she said, "I don't care." I said, "Really?" She said, "Not at all." I said, "What do you do for a living?" She said, "I'm a hospice nurse." I said, "I'm going to need one of those." She's a good person in her family. I had to go meet her parents. I went to meet her parents, and because she wanted me to do that, so I went and met them, and I came back to the club, and all the guys cornered me and said, What you think of her parents?" I said, "They're nice kids." And this is the good part. So we decided she wanted to be married. That's this big deal to her. She wanted to be married. That's fine. I've done it lots of times. I know exactly how. And so we get married in my backyard, and her parents and all of our AA guys are there. And I start sweating like a dog, and I'm weak, and I got this pain in my back. And when we were done and we cut the cake, and I said, "I think I need to go to the hospital," and I had a heart attack. So I had that heart attack, and we're together for a little while, and she finally sees that, my age and her age, that ain't going to work. And so she leaves, and I'm putting my life back together, and I'm ashamed of myself because I should have never done that. It's like, Danny, please, what an ignoramus, And I've just beaten myself up, and I'm lonely, and I feel bad. And she comes back one day, and she sits down, and she's pregnant. And I know it ain't me. She's got problems. She doesn't know what to do. And I let her stay with me throughout the pregnancy, and I helped her while she went to nurse. And I'm not trying to say beating me, no halo here, but I recognized that there was an amends to be made here, that she needed me now, and it didn't need to be about anything. It just she needed me. So I stayed with her through that pregnancy, helped her go to college. Go to nursing school so she could get an RN. And I was there to cut the cord for that baby. And I raised that shit. I raised that boy for 9 months. And I always knew that there was time coming when they'd have to go, and it was in December that they left. And I thought, what exactly do I do now? Who are you going to go talk to? Listen to somebody tell you, "I told you so." And what I sat down for a minute, and I thought, what should I do? And I thought, how about join AA, get in both feet? How about just roll up your sleeves and see if what we've been talking about is real? Maybe you have been hedging your bets for a long time, and it's time for you to launch out into the deep. And I made up my mind that I'm going to go to my grave a sober man. But I don't mean sober like I don't drink. I mean sober like my natural state. That's where we were when we started this thing. I want that peace that passes understanding. I want to quit looking for people, places, and her to feel me. I'm letting go. And my life has really changed. And all of a sudden I find myself 43 years sober, and I'm having this spiritual awakening. And I know less than I ever did. And I'm hanging out with guys like Gary and Tom, and I'm going to get on the plane, go back home, and I'm going to be in my group. I got a group that meets at my house on Wednesdays, and we do the big book, and we check in. And these guys, they need me, and I need them. I love you guys. I would like to keep you a lot longer because I can't eat ice cream, and I don't want you to. While I'm giving up stuff, it turns out I have to give up sugar and processed food, so yay. Join me on that little journey. But I'm happy to be here. I hope that, I want to say, especially to the new people, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome to the fastest growing organization that no one wants to join. But if you're drunk like me, there's just nothing like it. It's in here. We don't want anything from you. If you're new here, but we don't want your money. We don't care about where you've been, what you're doing, what your pronouns are or are not. We don't give a flip. All we care about is, do you want to be sober, and would you like to meet this power? We agnostics, it defines the power. And as the first 100 saw it, it's all-powerful, guiding, creative spirit of the universe. That's what I've been looking for my whole life. Power to live and be me. Guidance so that I know which way to turn. And some creative intelligence so that I know how to do what I've been tasked to do. Thank you very much. I love you guys.